I get it when a friend asks if a pre-built gaming rig is worth the money. The first thing they worry about is ending up with a machine that looks great on the box but can't keep up when they fire up the newest title. You've probably already scrolled through a dozen specs sheets, wondered if the RTX 5050 will actually give you the smooth 144Hz you're after, and thought about how much desk space a tower like this will actually take up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. That hesitation is real, especially with a market flooded with gaming PCs that range from barely adequate budget boxes to custom-built monsters you'd have to assemble yourself. The Skytech Gaming Edge lands right in the middle, promising a 6-core Ryzen 5, an RTX 5050, a full terabyte of SSD storage and 16 gigabytes of RAM, all in a compact chassis. The question is, does that promise translate into a daily experience that feels solid enough to justify the price tag, or are there hidden trade-offs that only show up after you plug it in? First, let's talk about who will actually benefit from this machine. If you're the kind of gamer who spends a good chunk of your week in titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring or Apex Legends and you want to hit at least 1080p 60 FPS without cranking the settings to ultra-low, this rig is built for you. The RTX 5050, while not a top-tier card, is still a step up from the older GTX 1660 series and handles most modern games at high settings quite comfortably. The 1TB NVMe SSD also means you'll spend almost no time waiting for worlds to load. I've seen load times dip under 10 seconds in open-world games that usually take double that on a SATA drive. If you're a competitive shooter player who relies on ultra-high frame rates, you might find the 8GB of GDDR6 on the RTX 5050 a bit limiting for 144Hz or 240Hz monitors, especially in graphically intensive titles. The card can push 1080p 144 FPS in less demanding games, but once you get into the latest AAA releases, you'll likely have to dial back some visual fidelity to stay smooth. So for a pure esports focus, a system with a stronger GPU or a dedicated higher refresh rate monitor paired with a higher-end card might be a better fit. Now, the practical side of setting this thing up. The tower is designed to fit on a standard desk without overwhelming the space, but it does have a fairly pronounced front grille that can collect dust faster than a sealed case. Skytech includes a decent air cooler, and the fans are quiet enough that you won't hear them over your game's soundtrack, but you'll want to schedule a quick dust wipe every few months. The power supply is a 650W Gold unit, which gives you headroom for modest upgrades, say, swapping the RTX 5050 for an RTX 3060 down the line without having to replace the PSU. One hidden trade-off is the lack of an optical drive. That's not a deal-breaker for most gamers these days, but if you still keep a collection of physical discs or plan to install older games that require a CD, you'll need an external USB DVD solution. Also, while the system ships with Windows 11 and no bloatware, you'll still have to run the initial driver updates for the GPU and motherboard yourself. That's a simple process, just head to the manufacturer's site and grab the latest drivers, but it does add a couple of minutes to the out-of-the-box experience. The Wi-Fi 5, 802.11 AC, built into the board is solid for most home internet setups, though if you have a gigabit fiber connection and a high-performance router, you might notice a small ceiling on wireless throughput compared to a dedicated Ethernet cable. For most gamers, a wired connection is still the gold standard for latency-critical titles, so consider running a short Ethernet cable from your router to the PC if you can. What about the everyday usability beyond gaming? The 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM is enough for multitasking while you game. I've kept a music streaming app, Discord, and a web browser open alongside Valorant without any hiccups. The 1TB SSD also gives you room for a solid library of games, and because it's NVMe, you'll notice the system boots in under 10 seconds, which feels premium compared to older desktop setups. If you also dabble in light content creation like video editing for YouTube or streaming, the CPU's 6 cores and the GPU's CUDA cores give you a workable baseline, though you'll hit limits if you start editing 4K footage regularly. On the downside, the system's upgrade path is somewhat constrained by the case size. While the PSU can handle a higher-end GPU, the interior space is tight, and you might have to be careful with cable management if you decide to add more storage drives or a larger cooling solution. The motherboard isn't a high-end model either, so overclocking the Ryzen 5 is not on the table. You'll be running it at stock speeds. For most gamers that's fine, but if you're the type who loves squeezing every extra percent,